Today we're going to be tying a Cascade Lake bass killing machine, slightly modified from the older pattern in that it is tied on a tube, so that's going to open up a huge range for hook possibilities, also sizes, weights. This is a Pro Tube micro tube. I've got some U140. I've got my Pro Tube tool in the vise.
Needle, flexi needle.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, flexi needle is an adapter that just locked down in the vise.
So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a base wrap of thread down the whole tube. Doesn't have to be perfect because we'll be going back over the top of it. Snip off my excess. I've got an extra large set of eyes, but again, with the tube, this could open up a huge possibility. We could do cones on it. We could do cone wrapped with lead. Depends on your fishing situation, how much weight you actually need. I'm just going to figure eight this set of eyes on there.
You're looking for this one to drop to the bottom.
We're looking at jig and pig. I mean, that's essentially what the whole thing is about. If you've watched Saturday morning bass shows or tournament fished or whatever the case may be, you will be familiar with the jig and pig. So I've got the eyes on there. Drop a Zap-A-Gap would be very appropriate. I'm going to start by tying in a piece of black large cactus chenille, right back where the junction tubing would go. The next step is to take some fly tails. These are just a stamped piece of silicone, very similar to your Mr. Twister type of tail. I'm going to take those and I'm going to offset them from each other so that the loops would be heading the opposite directions, if that makes sense. Will once they get tied on.
Well, you're looking for a frog leg type of appearance.
Frog leg or crayfish claws or something along those lines. Most importantly, we just want them to be out and away from the actual body of the fly itself. That way when you put it under tension and you start pulling it, they're really going to start kicking a whole bunch. And once I get those tied in, I'll take my cactus chenille, wrap that forward. 4 or 5 wraps, something like that. We want to leave enough room so that we can tie in those skirts, and then I'll leave that excess piece just kind of hanging off to the side while we get our skirts tied in. I have taken a hank of each, the blue and the black crazy legs, and I'm going to stack those on top of each other. I want the black on the outside, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie these facing forward. The black is on the bottom, the blue is on the top. I'm going to lay that on top of my eyes and kind of just bend it a little bit around the tube itself. So that way when I put tension on it with the thread, it spins more or less like a hackle around the tube itself. It's going to make it so you can lock it down on there. Okay, so it's on there fairly tight. Take that cactus chenille and just basically finish up the body by advancing it clear on up behind the skirt itself. Once I get that locked down, I can remove my excess.
And adding Zap-A-Gap again there too wouldn't be a bad call. You know, I mean,
you can reinforce that fly pretty much wherever with the zap as you go. And I'll take that forward, make a few wraps in front. Next thing I'm going to do is whip finish. Not very many materials, a little bit easier to tie than the Bassmaster, just in that there's only 2 skirts on this one instead of 3. Should not affect the fishing at all. In fact, it works a little bit better because it's easier to cast. So there basically is the completed fly. I have one already pre-tied. So it's got great action on there, kicking tails, lead-eye, jigs, the whole 9 yards. Lots of different hook possibilities. This has been my favorite. This is a Gamakatsu product, the Finesse Worm Weedless with Weed Guard. So essentially what I've got here is I've got a piece of clear junction tubing. Could use any color you want to. Again, that's kind of the cool thing with the Pro Tube setup is that they've got 100 different setups that you can use, all of them different variations. This is a wire weedless weed guard on there. Fish bites down, that pops off, hooks them. The eye of the hook gets pulled up. We can adjust that size so that it's right up at the base here, at the base of the tube, or extending back towards the end of the skirt like this one. Also leaves the door open for possibly putting a 2-hook setup like a lot of the spinner baits and things like that do have.
I think it also opens up the possibility of threading 2 of those flies on 1 leader.
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and having an elongated, heavier fly in a pretty simple.
And again, this is a kind of a template pattern. Basically, we could change the colors up in this. My favorite colors are black and purple. Black and blue, but the crayfish stuff is just out of hand. So for someone who wants to have a deep sinking fly, fishing crayfish patterns, on the Willamette here or wherever they happen to hang out, I think we've got excellent possibilities for that. Umpqua fish, same type of deal, fishing the big ones that live down the bottom. It's one of my favorites, and I hope it's one of yours too.